"You're not family anymore, Uncle Frank. Don't embarrass me by showing up." Those were the exact words my nephew Marcus said to me 15 years ago, standing in the parking lot of the Palliser Hotel in downtown Calgary. He was wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. I was wearing my work coveralls from the auto shop because I'd come straight from a double shift to congratulate him on his engagement. I still remember the look on his fiance's face. Rebecca, that was her name. She looked at my oil-stained hands like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Marcus wouldn't even shake my hand. He just stood there, arms crossed, and told me not to come to the wedding. "Look at yourself," he said. "You've been fixing cars in the same garage for 30 years. My colleagues are going to be there. CEOs, investors, people who actually matter. I can't have you there in that." I looked down at my coveralls. Frank's auto repair was stitched across the chest. The same coveralls I'd worn since I opened my shop in 1978. The same shop where I'd taught Marcus how to change a tire when he was 12. Where I'd helped him rebuild his first car when he was 16. Where I'd given him $5,000 when he needed tuition money for his business degree at the University of Calgary. "I understand," I said quietly. "I just wanted to congratulate you." "Well, you did. Now, I'd appreciate it if you left. We're meeting Rebecca's parents for dinner at Teatro. Do you even know where that is?" I knew where it was. I'd driven past it 1,000 times. Never been inside, though. Couldn't afford it on a mechanic's salary. That was the last conversation we had for 15 years. Let me back up a bit. I should explain how we got here. Marcus is my sister, Claire's son. Was my sister's son. Claire died when Marcus was 19. Car accident on the Trans-Canada Highway during a winter storm. His father had left when Marcus was a baby. So after Claire died, I was the only family he had left. I tried to be there for him. I really did. I helped him through university, invited him over for Sunday dinners, tried to teach him the value of hard work, of being honest, of treating people with respect regardless of how much money they had. But Marcus had other ideas. He was always ambitious, always wanted more. Got his business degree, got a job at some energy company downtown, started climbing that corporate ladder, started making money, started forgetting where he came from. The first time I noticed the change was about a year after he graduated. I'd invited him to my place for Thanksgiving. I was living in a small bungalow in Forest Lawn. Nothing fancy, but it was paid off and it was mine. I'd made turkey, stuffing, the whole thing. He showed up 2 hours late, took one look at my neighborhood, and I could see the judgment in his eyes. "Uncle Frank," he said, "why are you still living here? This area's gone downhill." "It's a good neighborhood," I said. "I know all my neighbors. Mrs. Kowalski next door brings me pierogies every Christmas." He just shook his head. "You could do better. You've been running that shop for, 25 years? You should be making decent money." What he didn't understand was that I put most of my money into other things. But I didn't tell him that. I just smiled and served him turkey. Over the next few years, the distance between us grew. He'd cancel our Sunday dinners, stop returning my calls. When I did see him, he'd talk about his condo downtown, his new BMW, his golf club membership, his business trips to Houston and Dubai. I was proud of him, in a way. He'd made something of himself. But I could see he was losing something too. The kindness he'd had as a kid, the humility, the ability to see people as people, not as stepping stones or obstacles. Then came the engagement to Rebecca. She came from money, old Calgary money. Her father owned half the office towers on Stephen Avenue, and Marcus wanted to impress them, wanted to show them he was worthy, wanted to prove he'd left his working class roots behind. So I became an embarrassment. The uncle who fixed cars, the uncle who lived in a rundown neighborhood, the uncle who showed up in coveralls. After that night at the Palliser Hotel, I didn't try to contact him anymore. What was the point? He'd made his choice. I wasn't invited to the wedding, wasn't invited to anything. I heard through an old friend that it was a big affair at the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel, 200 guests, ice sculptures, a $30,000 wedding cake. I sent a card, never got a response. The years passed. I kept running my shop. Frank's Auto Repair. Same location on 17th Avenue SE that I'd had since 1978. Same brick building with the fading sign. Same loyal customers who'd been coming to me for decades. People would ask me sometimes, "Frank, when are you going to retire? Sell this place? Enjoy life a little?" I'd just smile. "I am enjoying life," I'd say. And I was, in my way. But I thought about Marcus sometimes. Wondered how he was doing. Wondered if he ever thought about me. Wondered if he remembered the time I taught him how to change his first spark plug, or the time we drove up to Banff together to see the mountains, or the time I stayed up all night with him when Claire died, just sitting there, because there were no words that could make it better. I figured I'd never hear from him again, and I'd made peace with that. Then, 15 years and 4 months after he told me not to come to his wedding, my phone rang. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was under a 2008 Silverado, replacing the transmission, when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I almost didn't answer it. The number wasn't saved in my contacts. Could have been a telemarketer, but something made me slide out from under that truck and pick up. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then heavy breathing. Then a voice I hadn't heard in 15 years. "Uncle Frank?" I stood there in my shop, transmission fluid on my hands, not sure what to say. "Marcus?" "Yeah, it's me." More silence. I could hear traffic in the background. Honking. He was calling from outside somewhere. "How did you get this number?" I asked. It was a stupid question. It was the same number I'd had for 30 years, but I didn't know what else to say. "I never deleted it," he said quietly. "Look, can we meet? I need to talk to you." Something in his voice. Something desperate. Something broken. "Where are you?" I asked. I'm at a coffee shop on 17th Avenue. Near your shop, actually. The Tim Hortons. Are you still? "Same place," I said. "Give me 10 minutes. I washed the transmission fluid off my hands, told my assistant Joey to handle things, and walked the 2 blocks to the Tim Hortons. I saw him through the window before I went in. He was sitting in the corner booth, hunched over a coffee cup. He looked different. Older, obviously, but also smaller, somehow. Like life had beaten something out of him. I walked in, our eyes met, and for a second, I saw the kid I used to know. The kid who'd help me in the shop on weekends. The kid who'd laugh at my terrible jokes. The kid who called me Uncle Frank, in that way that made me feel like I mattered. But that was just for a second. "Hey," I said, sliding into the booth across from him. "Hey," he said back. We sat there in silence for a minute. I waited for him to speak first. This was his meeting. Finally, he looked up at me, and I could see it in his eyes. Something had gone terribly wrong. "I'm in trouble," he said. I didn't respond, just waited. "Bad trouble? I don't know where else to go." He told me the whole story. Took him almost an hour, sitting there in that Tim Hortons while the afternoon turned to evening. The short version. He'd left the energy company 5 years ago to start his own consulting firm. Business had been good, really good. He'd taken on a partner, a guy named David Chen, someone he'd known from university. They'd landed some major contracts, government stuff, private sector stuff. They were making money hand over fist. Marcus had bought a house in Mount Royal, one of those mansions on Premier Way. $3 million. He drove a Tesla and a Range Rover. Rebecca had a closet the size of my entire living room. They had 2 kids, Ethan and Sophie, 8 and 6 years old. Marcus showed me pictures on his phone. Beautiful kids. They looked like Claire. Everything was perfect, Marcus said, until it wasn't. 6 months ago, he discovered that David had been embezzling from the company. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. The company accounts were empty. Worse, David had taken out loans in the company's name. Loans that Marcus had personally guaranteed without realizing it. By the time Marcus figured it out, David was gone, disappeared. Rumor was he'd fled to China. The creditors came calling. The bank foreclosed on the business, then on the house. Marcus had tried to fight it, hired lawyers. But the debt was too big. $3 million in business loans. Another $2 million on the house. Personal credit cards maxed out, trying to keep everything afloat. 2 weeks ago, the bank had taken the house. He, Rebecca, and the kids were living in a basement apartment in the Northeast. Rebecca was working as a receptionist at a dental office. Marcus was doing contract work, whatever he could find, but it wasn't enough. "I'm broke," he said, and his voice cracked. "Actually broke. Not like, I can't afford to go on vacation broke. Like, I don't know how I'm going to pay rent next month broke." He looked at me with those desperate eyes. "I need help. I need money. A lot of it. I need to get back on my feet, pay off some of these debts, maybe start over. I've been to every bank. Nobody will give me a loan. My credit's destroyed." He paused, took a shaky breath. "I know I have no right to ask. I know what I said to you 15 years ago. I know I treated you like you were nothing. But you're the only family I have left, and I'm desperate." I sat there, looking at this man who'd told me I was an embarrassment, who'd excluded me from his life because I wasn't successful enough, who'd chosen money and status over family. And now he was asking me for money. "How much do you need?" I asked. Hope flickered in his eyes. I need about $500,000. I know that's a lot, but if I could just pay off the most pressing debts, get a small place for my family, maybe start a new business. $500,000. I sat back in the booth, looked at this man who was technically my nephew, but who'd been a stranger for 15 years. Part of me wanted to stand up and walk away. Part of me wanted to tell him exactly what he'd told me 15 years ago. "You're not family anymore." But I'm not built that way. "Let me think about it," I said. "Give me your number. I'll call you in a few days." The relief on his face was almost painful to see. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, Uncle Frank. I know I don't deserve this. I know I was terrible to you, but I promise, if you help me, I'll pay you back. With interest, I just need a chance." I nodded, stood up, started to walk away. Then I turned back. "Marcus," I said, "why now? Why did you wait until you were desperate to call me?" He looked down at his coffee cup. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Pride, I guess. Shame. I didn't want you to see me like this. Didn't want you to know I'd failed. But you're okay with asking me for money?" He flinched. "I have kids, Uncle Frank. I have a family. I'd do anything for them. Even beg from the uncle I treated like garbage." I left him there in that coffee shop. I walked back to my shop, finished the transmission job, locked up for the night, drove home to my little bungalow in Forest Lawn, and I thought about what to do. See, here's what Marcus didn't know. What nobody knew except my accountant and my lawyer. That auto shop I'd been running for 40-some years, it did okay. Not great, but okay. Enough to pay the bills, save a bit, live comfortably. But that wasn't where my money came from. Back in 1985, a guy came into my shop. Professor from the University of Calgary, drove an old Honda Civic. Needed a new clutch. We got talking while I worked on his car. He told me about some research he was doing. Something about improving fuel injection systems, making engines more efficient. He was frustrated because he had this idea, this design, but no money to develop it. The university owned any patents created by faculty, so even if he did develop it, he wouldn't see much of the profits. I thought about it for a while. Then I made him an offer. "What if I funded your research?" I said. "I'll give you the money you need to develop this thing. In exchange, you work on it on your own time, not as a university project. We'll split any patents 50-50. He looked at me like I was crazy. "You're a mechanic," he said. "Where are you going to get research funding?" "I've been saving," I said, which was true. I'd been saving for years, living cheap, buying only what I needed. We shook on it. I gave him $50,000 over the next 2 years. Every spare dollar I had. He worked nights and weekends in his garage. 3 years later, we had a patent. 2 years after that, a major automotive company bought the patent, bought the whole thing outright. $8 million. My half, $4 million. But I didn't stop there. I took that $4 million and I invested it. Not in flashy stocks or risky ventures, in boring stuff. Index funds, government bonds, real estate investment trusts. I bought a small apartment building in Calgary, then another, then a commercial property. I lived the same life I'd always lived. Same house, same truck, same coveralls. Why change? I liked my life. But the money grew and grew. And by 2024, 40 years after I'd made that first investment, my net worth was around $85 million. Nobody knew. Not Marcus. Not my friends. Not my customers. I was just Frank the mechanic who lived in a small house and drove a 15-year-old Ford F-150. And now Marcus was asking me for $500,000. I could give it to him. Wouldn't even dent my accounts. I could write him a check right now, solve all his problems, give him the fresh start he was begging for. But would that actually help him? I thought about the Marcus I used to know. The kid who'd work hard in my shop, who'd take pride in fixing something with his own hands, who'd understood that money wasn't everything. And I thought about the Marcus who'd told me I was an embarrassment, who'd valued status over family, who'd lost everything because he'd been so focused on looking successful that he'd stopped paying attention to what actually mattered. If I just gave him the money, what would he learn? I called him 3 days later. Marcus, I said, I'll help you, but not the way you're thinking. Silence on the other end. I'm not going to give you $500,000, I continued, but I am going to give you a job. A job? Yeah, at my shop. $15 an hour. That's what I pay my new hires. You'll work 40 hours a week. You'll help with oil changes, tire rotations, basic maintenance, whatever needs doing. Uncle Frank, I don't think you understand. I need money now. I understand perfectly, I said. You need to pay rent. $15 an hour, 40 hours a week. That's about $2,400 a month after taxes. You said your basement apartment is $1,200 a month. That'll cover rent and groceries if you're careful. Rebecca's working too, right? Between the two of you, you can make it work. But what about my debts? The creditors? File for bankruptcy, I said. It'll hurt your credit for a few years, but you'll survive. People do. I can't work as a mechanic's assistant. I have an MBA. I ran $1 million consulting firm. And now you're broke and begging family for money, I said, not unkindly. Pride is expensive, Marcus. The job's there if you want it. Up to you. He hung up on me. I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. Then, on a Monday morning, he showed up at my shop. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing jeans and an old university sweatshirt, dark circles under his eyes. I'll take the job, he said quietly. Okay, I said. You start today. Joey will show you what to do. For the first month, Marcus was awful. Not at the work, Joey taught him fine, and he picked things up quick enough. But the attitude, he'd complain constantly. This was beneath him. He had a degree. He should be in an office, not lying under cars. His back hurt. His hands were dirty. The customers could tell. He'd be short with them, impatient, like they were wasting his time. One day, I pulled him aside. You see that customer you just talked to? I said. Mrs. Chen? She's been coming here for 30 years. 30 years. Marcus. You know why? Because you're cheap? Because I treat her with respect. Because when her husband died and she didn't know anything about cars, I took the time to explain everything to her. I showed her what was wrong, why it needed fixing, how much it should cost. I never cheated her, never talked down to her, and now her kids bring their cars here too. I looked him in the eye. Money comes and goes, Marcus. But how you treat people, that's what lasts. That's what matters. He didn't say anything, just went back to work. But slowly, over the next few months, something changed. He started taking pride in his work, started learning not just how to do the job, but how to do it right. Started treating customers the way I'd taught him to, with patience, with respect, with honesty. I'd see him explaining to a customer why they didn't need an expensive repair right now, how they could wait a few months, how to maintain their car better to avoid problems. The old Marcus would have upsold them. The new Marcus was putting their interests first. His family situation stabilized. Between his paycheck and Rebecca's, they were making ends meet. Tight, but they were managing. He'd bring Ethan and Sophie by the shop, sometimes on weekends. I'd teach them simple stuff, like how to check oil, how to change a tire. One Saturday, I was showing Ethan how a carburetor worked, and I looked over at Marcus. He was watching us with this look on his face. Sad, but also something else. Grateful, maybe, or regretful. After the kids left, Marcus stayed behind to help me close up the shop. I was thinking about my mom today, he said suddenly. About something she used to say. I waited. She'd say, Marcus, your Uncle Frank is the richest man I know. And I'd laugh, because you were just a mechanic. I thought she meant rich in spirit or some hippie thing like that. He paused. But she was right. You are rich. Not in money. In the things that actually matter. I didn't respond. Just kept wiping down the workbench. I'm sorry, he said, for what I said 15 years ago, for how I treated you, for thinking you were an embarrassment. You were never the embarrassment. I was. You were young, I said. People make mistakes. I'm 37 years old. I wasn't that young. Young enough, I said. We stood there in the quiet shop, just the two of us, and it felt like something had healed. Not completely. Some wounds take time, but the healing had started. Marcus worked for me for 8 months total. Then one day, he came to me with an idea. I've been thinking, he said, about starting a business, not consulting. Something different. Something actually useful. Yeah? Yeah. An honest car dealership. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but hear me out. Most used car dealers are scammers. They roll back odometers, hide problems, pressure people into bad loans. What if there was a dealership that actually cared about the customer, that inspected every car thoroughly, priced them fairly, didn't play games? He was excited. More excited than I'd seen him in months. Joey and I have been talking, he continued. He knows cars inside and out. I know business. If we partnered up, maybe we could make it work. But I'd need startup capital, not a lot. Maybe $50,000 for initial inventory, a small lot, insurance. You asking me for money? I said. No, he said firmly. I'm asking if you'd consider investing. As a business partner. 15% stake for $50,000. We'd pay you back with interest, plus profit share, if we succeed. I thought about it. 30%, I said, and I want to see a proper business plan. Cash flow projections, market analysis, the whole thing. His face lit up. Seriously? Seriously. But Marcus, if you're going to do this, do it right. Do it honest. The minute you start cutting corners or screwing people over, I'm out. I will, he said. I promise. That was 2 years ago. Honest Auto Sales has been running for 20 months now. They're doing well. Not making millions, but they're profitable. They're growing, and they're building a reputation. I stop by sometimes, see Marcus and Joey working together, treating customers right, building something real. Marcus and I have Sunday dinner now. Every week. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at his. He and Rebecca upgraded to a small house in Inglewood. Nothing fancy, but it's theirs. The kids are doing great. Last month, on a Sunday afternoon at my place, after Rebecca and the kids had gone home, Marcus and I were sitting on my back deck. It was one of those perfect Alberta evenings, the sun setting over the mountains in the distance. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Sure. That day at Tim Hortons, when I asked you for $500,000, could you have done it? Could you have actually given me that money? I took a sip of my beer. Thought about how to answer. Yeah, I said. I could have. He looked at me, confused. What do you mean? You're a mechanic. How could you? I mean, I could have written you a check that day and it wouldn't have made a dent in my bank account. The confusion on his face deepened. Then slowly, understanding started to dawn. The patent, he said quietly. Mom told me once, years ago. She said you'd helped fund some professor's research. I'd forgotten about that. I made a few good investments over the years, I said. Lived below my means, saved, invested wisely, did okay for myself. How okay? I thought about whether to tell him. Then I figured, why not? We were past the point where money mattered between us. Last time I checked, about $85 million. He stared at me. Just stared. Couldn't form words. You're a multimillionaire. And you live here? Drive that truck? Work in that shop? Why not? I said. I like my life. I like my work. I like my house. Money doesn't change that. But, but I asked you for $500,000. You could have just given it to me. You could have saved me months of stress, of struggle. I could have, I agreed. But would that have helped you? Really? He sat back in his chair, thought about it. No, he said finally. No, it wouldn't have. If you'd just given me the money, I'd have paid off my debts, started another business, probably made the same mistakes all over again. Because I hadn't learned anything. I hadn't changed. Exactly. But working for you, living on minimum wage, having to actually struggle, that changed me. That taught me what actually matters. That was the idea. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while. Are you going to retire? Marcus asked. Travel the world? Buy a yacht? Do rich people stuff? I laughed. Nah, I like my shop. I'll keep working till I don't want to anymore. When that day comes, maybe I'll hand it over to Joey. He's earned it. What about the money? What are you going to do with it? I've got some charities I support. Scholarship fund for kids who can't afford university. Habitat for Humanity. Some other things. Figure I'll give most of it away eventually. Can't take it with me. Marcus shook his head, smiling. You know what's funny? 15 years ago, I thought you were a failure. I thought you'd wasted your life. And all along, you were more successful than I could ever dream of being. Success isn't measured in dollars, Marcus. It's measured in character, in how you treat people, in the life you build, in the legacy you leave. Yeah, he said. I'm starting to figure that out. Last week, Marcus called me, said he wanted to take me out for dinner. Somewhere nice, his treat. We went to Teatro, that fancy restaurant where he'd gone with Rebecca's parents 15 years ago, the one I couldn't afford back then. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Over dinner, he told me he and Joey were planning to expand, open a second location. They'd saved up enough to do it without outside investors. They were going to do it right. I wanted to say thank you, Marcus said, for not giving up on me, for giving me a second chance, for teaching me what you tried to teach me 20 years ago. But I was too stupid to learn. You weren't stupid, I said. You were just lost. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find what really matters. Well, I found it, he said, and I'm not losing it again. We raised our glasses, uncle and nephew, family. After dinner, we walked back to where I'd parked my truck. Same old F-150. Marcus drove a 5-year-old Camry now. Nothing fancy, but it was paid off, and it was enough. Uncle Frank, he said as we reached my truck. I love you. I should have said that more over the years. Should have said it 15 years ago instead of telling you not to come to my wedding. I love you too, kid, I said. And I meant it. I drove home that night thinking about how life works. How sometimes the people who look like they have nothing are the ones who have everything. How real wealth isn't in your bank account, but in your relationships. Your character, your integrity. I thought about Claire, and how proud she'd be of the man Marcus had become. Not because he was successful in business, but because he'd finally learned what she'd tried to teach him all along. That being a good person matters more than being a rich person. That family is worth more than any fortune. That the size of your bank account says nothing about the size of your heart. I still run my shop, still wear my coveralls, still drive my old truck, still live in my little house in Forest Lawn. And I wouldn't change a thing, because I'm rich in all the ways that actually matter. And now, finally, Marcus understands that too. That's what I wanted to give him. Not money, but understanding. And that's worth more than $85 million could ever buy.